The consistent thread really through it is that Archer said that Hunter Biden was selling the Biden family brand, and that the most added value came from Joe Biden. There were private dinners that then Vice President Biden attended with Hunter's business associates.
The former vice president was flying in, and we were to meet at the Beverly Hilton. The Milken Conference was going on, obviously one of the top 3 conferences in the world for anybody that's a global investor or developing different humanitarian causes.
This is like a mini Davos, the World Economic Forum. There's more CEOs here than live in Delaware.
I wasn't attending Milken, so they had to issue me special credentials. A whole team walked out into the valet of the Beverly Hilton and walked me into that speech that he gave and sat me at the head table in front of everyone. And so it was set up for the night of May 2nd at the Beverly Hilton. So then Hunter and his father and security came through the bar, and obviously I stood up out of respect to shake his hand, and Hunter introduced me as, this is Tony, Dad, the individual I told you about that's helping us with the business that we're working on and the Chinese. And so I stood up and shook his hand, and obviously we sat down and I think ordered some drinks. I think Jim Biden was hungry and might have ordered some food.
As my brother Jimmy Biden, who is here today, will tell you.
And, you know, Joe asked me to talk about my background, my family. He thanked me for my service. I'm obviously very proud of that, proud of my brother's service and my grandfather's service. And then he walked through sort of his family, you know, obviously some of the tragedies they've dealt with, his political career. After I met with Joe Biden the morning of May 3rd at the Milken Conference, and then was taken backstage after Joe had spoken, you know, we joked around for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I walked him out to his car. I didn't request to meet with Joe. They requested that I meet with Joe. And, you know, he's putting his, and Hunter says this in writing, it was referenced multiple times, they were putting their entire family legacy on the line. They knew exactly what they were doing. They were dealing with a Chinese-owned, you know, enterprise run by Chairman Yi, CFC, that had strong financial support and political support from the Chinese Communist Party.
My partner, who was worth $323 billion, found it and is now missing. The richest man in the world is missing, who was my partner. He was missing since I last saw him in his $58 million apartment and signed a $4 billion deal to build the fucking largest fucking LNG port in the world.
Thank you for the chance to give me a call. Nothing urgent. Just want to talk to you. I thought the article, at least the thing online, it's going to be printed tomorrow in the Times, was good. I think it's clear.
So Sinohawk Holdings was a Delaware LLC, which was effectively a partnership between the Biden family, myself, Rob Walker and James Gillier, and a Chinese large company called CEFC, which turned out to effectively be the capitalistic arm of, you know, President Xi's One Belt, One Road.
This is China's Belt and Road Initiative, the most ambitious infrastructure project in modern history that's designed to reroute global trade. And it's how China plans to become the world's next superpower. It's 2013, and Chinese President Xi Jinping is giving a speech in Kazakhstan, where he mentions the ancient Silk Road, a network of trade routes that spread goods, ideas, and culture across Europe, the Middle East, and China as far back as 200 BC. He then says,
we should take an innovative approach and jointly build an economic belt along the Silk Road.
A month later, Xi is in Indonesia.
The two sides should work together to build up a new maritime route in the 21st century.
These two phrases were the first mentions of Xi's legacy project, the multi-trillion-dollar Belt and Road Initiative, or BRI. They're also the two components of the plan. There's an overland economic belt of 6 corridors that serve as new routes to get goods in and out of China, like this railroad connecting China to London, and these gas pipelines from the Caspian Sea to China, and a high-speed train network in Southeast Asia. Then there's the Maritime Silk Road, a chain of seaports stretching from the South China Sea to Africa that also directs trade to and from China. The BRI also includes oil refineries, industrial parks, power plants, mines, and fiber optic networks, all designed to make it easier for the world to trade with China. So far, over 60 countries have reportedly signed agreements for these projects. And the list is growing because China promotes it as a win-win for everyone. See, typically, to get investment from the West, countries have to meet strict ethical standards. But China's offered billions of dollars, mostly in loans, with far fewer conditions. So it's no surprise the BRI has been a big hit with the less democratic countries in the region. China has signed agreements with authoritarian governments, military regimes, and some of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's even affiliated with Afghanistan, Ukraine, Yemen, and Iraq. A recent report found that many of the countries indebted to China are very vulnerable, including 8 that are at high risk of being unable to pay. So why does China keep lending? Because there's more to the BRI than just economics.
Since 2013, many countries have been enticed by the CCP's Belt Road Initiative, a global infrastructure development and investment strategy.
China has positioned itself as an advocate of globalization and says its policies help the developing world.
Chinese institutions are lending to countries often with very opaque agreements that no one knows the terms of until there's a bankruptcy or a failure to deliver, to pay back the terms of the loans, often with corruption taking place and outright bribery of local officials for projects of dubious merit that don't use local workers or local materials, but really are almost at the exclusive advantage of Chinese lending institutions, Chinese industrial overcapacity, Chinese labor access, with ultimate Chinese political control strategies and objectives over many parts of the world.
In Sri Lanka, China loaned about $1.5 billion for a new deepwater port. It was a key stop on the maritime Silk Road. By 2017, it was clear Sri Lanka couldn't pay back the loan, so instead they gave China control of the port as part of a 99-year lease. China also controls the strategic port in Pakistan, where it has a 40-year lease. It's pushing for a similar agreement in Myanmar, and it just opened an actual Chinese naval base in Djibouti. These are all signs of what's been called the string of pearls theory. It predicts that China is trying to establish a string of naval bases in the Indian Ocean that will allow it to station ships and guard shipping routes that move through the region. So while China's not getting its money back, it's still achieving some very important strategic goals. China's growing influence challenges the status of the US, which has been the world's lone superpower for the last several decades. The BRI is China's way of leveraging power to become a global leader. By building relationships and taking control of global trade, China's well on its way.
And Sinohawk Holdings was set up to effectively deploy billions of dollars that CFC was claiming, and rightfully believable because they were doing it around the world, to invest via Sinohawk in infrastructure projects, technology companies, investment banks, financial institutions, both here in the U.S. and around the world. That deal 100% happened. That Sinohawk document they're holding was fully executed, both by Jim Biden, Hunter Biden, myself, James Gilley, Rob Walker, and then on the Chinese side, Hudson West 4 executed the document. So it was a fully operating business. In the spring of 2017, I expected CFC was going to deploy billions of dollars through Sinohawk, and I was focused on taking those billions of dollars and making a return on it. And I expected to make hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the Bidens probably thought they were going to make billions of dollars.
How much do you think Hunter, in the end, got from this, from diverting this money? Do you think he received the money?
So he definitely received the money. I mean, the bank statements have been made public. You know, he received over $5 million, and then I think an incremental $1 million in a legal consulting fee to represent Patrick Ho.
I have another New York Times reporter calling about my representation of literally, Dr. Patrick Ho, the fucking spy chief of China.
I was on the Tibetan Plateau with Xi Jinping. I traveled 17,000 miles with him. I've spoken with him more than any other head of state because it started when I was vice president, and President Hu was the president, and he was the vice president. We knew he was going to be successful. It was inappropriate for Barack to spend that time with him, but I spent a lot of time with him. I met alone with him, just he and I, and a simultaneous interpreter 68 times, 68 hours, 68 times, more than 68 hours.